The signal. Semyon Ivanov, an ex-soldier, took up the job of a track walker to inspect sections of the rail track at regular intervals. He would go over the track twice a day, examine and tighten up nuts here and there, look at the water pipes, and then go home. The only drawback was that he always had to get the inspector's permission for the least little thing he wanted to do. One summer, Semyon met his neighbor, Vasily Stepanich, also a track walker like himself. Semyon talked about his past, but Vasily, for the most part, kept silent. The two men met again and Vasily fumed about the little pay that they received as track walkers. He was very annoyed at having to have pulled up his cabbages under the inspector's orders. He told Semyon about his decision to complain to the chief regarding the issue. One day some important persons were coming from St. Petersburg to conduct an inquiry. The chief arrived on a trolley and reached Semyon's hut. Semyon ran out and reported in soldierly fashion. The chief, along with the accompanying traffic inspector, then proceeded towards Vasily's hut. Semyon heard the chief remember Stepanich as the man against whom the inspector had made a note the previous year. He anticipated trouble between them and his neighbor. About 2 hours later, Semyon saw Vasily coming along the track. He had a stick in his hand, a small bundle on his shoulder, and his cheek was bound up in a handkerchief. He looked very pale, and muttered that he was going to town, to Moscow, to the head office. The chief had slapped him, and he would not let it go. The chief had been just about to leave when Vasily had made the complaint about the vegetable garden. The chief was annoyed at Vasily, who in turn had retaliated with something offensive. It was then that the chief had slapped him. The neighbors bade each other farewell, and Vasily was gone for some time. As a young lad, Semyon had learned to make flutes out of a kind of reed. One day, after inspecting the tracks, he started off to cut reed for his flutes. He cut a whole bunch of stalks and started back home. The sun was already dropping low, and in the dead stillness he heard the clang of iron striking iron. There was no repair going on in his section. What did it mean? The railway embankment stood high before him, and on the top, a man was squatting on the bed of the line, engaged in something. The man had loosened a rail so that it would move to one side. It was Vasily. Semyon scrambled up the bank as Vasily slid headlong down the other side and disappeared into the woods. Semyon threw down his bundle of sticks. A passenger train was due, and he had nothing with which to stop it, no flag. It was absolutely necessary to run to the hut for some tools. Semyon started running towards his hut. He was out of breath, but still ran, falling every now and then. He had cleared the forest and was only a few hundred feet from his hut when he heard the distant hooter of the factory. It was impossible to run back to the hut. He ran as far as where his sticks were lying in a heap. He bent down and seized one. Pulling off his cap, he took out of it a cotton scarf and drew his knife out of the upper part of his boot. Muttering, "God bless me," he made a cut in his left arm above the elbow. He soaked his scarf in blood, tied it to the stick, and stood waving his blood-stained flag. The train was already in sight, but the driver would not see him. His head began to swim. He dropped the flag and fell unconscious. However, the blood-stained scarf did not fall to the ground. A hand seized it and held it high to meet the approaching train. The train engineer saw it and reversed steam. The train came to a standstill. People jumped out of the carriages and collected in a crowd. They saw a man lying senseless on the track and another man standing beside him with a blood-stained rag on his stick. Vasily's quick thinking had saved the lives of the train passengers. Vasily looked around at all, and feeling sorry for what he had done, he said,
"Bind me. I tore up a rail."